Good evening, everybody, and from hi everyone from all over the world, all over the world. Welcome to this Agile Singapore, and this event is organized by Agile Singapore and also Agile Vietnam. And I'm so happy tonight we are able to invite Sandro, and he is the author of Software Craftsmanship book and also the founder of London Software Craftsmanship Group. So with the help of Alex Coover from Agile Vietnam, we link up together and do this event together. Without further ado, I would like to hand the mic over to Sandro to share with us what he has for us tonight. Sandro.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, first of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here, to be speaking to people in Singapore, Vietnam, and in other parts of Asia as well. It's always good to try to disseminate or to cross-pollinate, let's say, ideas across different parts of the world. So thank you very much for an invitation. It's really pleasure to be here. Okay, so let's get on with the talk then. That's why we are all here. So this talk, the way that it emerged was related to some of the work that we've been doing. So just a very brief explanation. So I started a company called Codurance. We are a consultancy company. We have like around 100 people. We have offices, 3 offices, and we do, basically we build software for our clients, right? So, but a lot of the work that we do is related to software craftsmanship, is related to quality. But what was very interesting is I spent years of my life talk about clean code, test-driven development, architecture, and a lot of people within the craftsmanship world and agile world wanted to apply those principles in their organizations. But most of us working in places where we very rarely are starting things from scratch, right? So let me just move the video here so I can look at everyone. So we very rarely build things from scratch, which applying some of those principles is not easy when you have a lot of legacy code. So then most of the work that we've been doing in the past few years are not only about building new features and creating new products, but most of the work, the core of our work, is actually taking existing systems that a lot of people call them legacy systems, and we improve them. So, and then we were looking at the type of improvements that we do. And the improvements, they go from very minor change in the code base to a completely reorganization of the code, of the business, of the architecture, replatforming. So that's what led us to this thing that we now call software modernization. So this talk is us sharing a small bit of our experience that we've been doing, but it's important for the target audience as well. So a lot of us, people in this call, we want to drive change, regardless of which level, where you are in your career. You might be a young developer starting your career. You might be already a CTO or an engineering manager, an architect. So regardless of where we are, we quite often, when you are passionate about something, we want to drive change, right? So basically this talk in here is about giving you some advice in how can you drive some technical change in places where you already have a lot of existing systems that are not so good anymore. Let's say they need some improvement. So that's what this talk is about, is giving you the idea of what you need to do to drive technical change and modernize systems in large organizations, right? So first of all, let me just, first of all, let's define what we mean by software modernization. I think that's a good place for us to start. So The way that I try to summarize that is that software modernization is the continuous process of improving strategic systems in order to increase business agility. So software modernization is not a thing that you do once and you are done, right? And you also is not a thing that you do for any system. So basically for me, the way I see a software modernization is any company that relies on systems, they will need to have an ongoing process of improvement or modernization. So they will be constantly modernizing their systems as the business shifts directions, as new technologies emerge. So they will need to have that process going. But you also don't modernize everywhere. You need to make sure that you spend this effort into strategic areas. I would also try to make a distinction. The reason I say strategic systems, because I wanted to make a distinction between the very small refactorings and retrofitting tests and automate tests from a modernization project. So for me, refactoring and adding tests, so this is part of our development process anyway. This is what things that we should do. As we are touching the systems, as we are improving things, adding new features, we will be improving gradually the code base and putting the tests in place and so on. When we talk about modernization, we are talking something larger than minor refactorings. We are talking about rearranging the foundation of our systems in order to support the business strategy. That's what I mean by modernization. Yeah. So why do we fail to make a case for it? So I believe that quite a few of you might relate to what I'm going to say. But how many times we saw a lot of inefficiencies in our let's say, I assume that most of you work for companies, and we see a lot of inefficiencies. We see systems that are not working well, they're difficult to test, we cannot release fast enough, the technology is old, or we see loads of different types of inefficiencies, right? Why can we not convince anyone to act on it? And this is not us only technical people. This is also for the business people. Just can you give me just like 10 seconds, because like there is some noise in my house, that I have some cleaners in here, and I just need to just give me 1 second, please.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So I'm back. So even business people, so any other person that is involved in a software project, they have their complaints. They say, wow, things are taking too long to be done, right? So we all see inefficiencies in different ways. So why do we struggle to make a case to fix those inefficiencies or to improve those inefficiencies? And I believe that I will speak more from a developer's perspective, because that's my background. So what I think is that we fail to address business problems. Every time that we see a problem, we come with a solution. We go to the business, oh, we need to do microservices, or we need to do continuous integration. We need to go to AWS. We need to do test-driven development. So we see inefficiencies, we come up with a solution in our head, and we go to business with a solution to a problem that they might not understand. And this is where the crazy conversation happens, because people are talking about solutions without trying to agree on the problem first. A lot of the times that is the case. And we also have, at least I had a lot of difficulties in understanding like that every technical problem is a business problem, right? There's no such a thing that, oh, this is a technical problem and this is a business problem. In a software company or in a company that relies on the software to run, every problem with the software or every problem with the technology is a business problem because it has a direct impact. But we technical people fail to make that case, to explain that. They say, look, if you have a problem in this area, this is how it affects the business. So we fail to make that correlation between a technical problem and business problem. And that's one of the things that impede us to make a business case for having the, I don't know, the budget, the time to actually fix or improve certain things, right? So, and not always we establish a common language between technology and business as well. We see the world from different perspectives and we fail to quite often unify those views, right? So, let me just so the rest of the talk, like I will try to give you some foundation that I believe that we, technical people that want to drive technical change, need to have before we even talk about the technical change. And then I will try to give you a strategy for that. So the first thing is we need to understand before we propose a solution, before we propose an improvement, a technical thing that we want to do, or that we want to modernize, let's say, what are the business drivers? What are we trying to fix? Fixing the technical problem, how that would relate to fixing a business problem, right? So for that, we need to understand some of the business drivers that we could enable. So here there is just a small list of 6. There is far more. Those are, I felt that are the more common ones that we talk about. So I'll go into a little bit of details of each one of them. So sustainable change is by far the most common one, right? So here, for me, the way I see that business can move only as fast as we can deliver quality software, right? So business that depend on software, the business will move as fast as we can improve their systems and build new features and adapt and everything else. But change is a constant. We'll always be changing things in a software project, right? So if we want to improve something, what exactly are we trying to do? What that improvement will bring to the business? One of the things could be it will reduce the lead time. What does it mean? The time from an idea, a business idea from someone for a feature or something that they want to do to software in production. How long is that time? How long does it take from idea to production? So maybe some of the changes that we are proposing is reducing that lead time. Or the cost of change. So how many people get involved every time we need to make a change? How long does it take to test something, right? So what are the things that are really holding us back? Why is it taking so long? So are we reducing some bottleneck? Or what are the kind of the defect rates that we have? So those are all about sustainable change. Normally the business want to go a bit faster and in a continuous process. They can release features in a very predictable way. So if you are proposing some technical change, you need to figure out, would my changes, the things that I'm proposing to modernize, to change, impact one of those things? Because then you have a better conversation with the business. You don't talk about, I want to automate my tests, or I don't want to automate my build pipeline. You say, we would like to reduce the lead time or the defect rate. So that's a very different conversation, right? So another one, for example, that is very common, a common complaint from business. They want to innovate, but they feel that it takes too long to innovate. Everything that they want to do takes too long. And they don't know exactly, and they say, well, if you're trying to innovate in one place, we need to change the entire system and stuff. So there are different types of innovations. So for example, some business, they are creating something brand new. Let's say that they are in the lean startup mode. Lean startup is not about small startups, by the way. You can have the same lean startup culture within a very large organization. So maybe there is in a very large organization, there is a specific department that they want to try out a few ideas. So the lean startup approach and mindset can fit in a very large organization. The lean startup approach is like build something fast, push it out, collect data, collect information, learn from that, adapt, push it out again. And you are in this constant flow of pushing stuff out, getting data, improving. So this is a great way to innovate. However, your systems need to be designed to support that way of working. You cannot just work like that without having an architecture and technology that supports that way of working, right? So, and that is the same for companies just build new features for existing clients. So it's a more of a design thinking in a way. They speak to a lot of clients, they collect the data, they see what the market wants, and when they release features, they release features with more certainty that those features will be useful to someone. Again, the way that you architect your system for this kind of innovation is also very different. It needs to be stable, it needs to be robust. As soon as it goes live, it's going to be used already. It's not an experiment anymore, it's concrete. So, but your system and your process, they need to be designed to support this kind of innovation. Another problem, when you want to innovate, you don't innovate across the entire company. You don't start from scratch, you throw everything away and start again. You normally, in a larger organization, you want to innovate in areas of your organization. So in order to isolate the innovation in certain areas from others, you need to design your architecture for that. You need to enable a change in one place, not to impact the other places. So all of that, you need technology and architecture that supports that kind of innovation, right? So leverage technology. Again, companies spend a fortune either with a QA, a full dedicated QA team that is very slow to test everything, and then they find bugs towards the end, and then as they find bugs, they need to go back to development, or just maintaining software in production. They have a big production services team, or they use data centers and stuff like that. So another driver for modernizing your systems is to remove that cost, is to leverage technology, use more modern technologies, so that you don't need to do a lot of things in-house. The technology can automate all of that for you, and then you can reduce those costs and everything else, right? And it creates competitive advantage as well. So you can release things faster, more stable, and things like that. So again, why am I saying it sounds obvious, but like, if we are driving technical change, this is the business language. We need to understand it. So like, look, we are going to change, we want to go microservices. Yeah, great. But like, what problem are we solving here? How does it impact the business? And that's what we're talking about here. So business alignment, I'm not going to go too deep into all of them. But first of all, this is a very interesting one that came up quite a few times as we are working with our clients and stuff. Most of our clients say, oh, we struggle to hire people. So there is hiring and keeping the people, right? So we call talent acquisition and retention, right? So you want to attract talent and retain the talent in your organization. But of course, that is every talented professional, they want to work in a great organization as well. So if your organization is using very old proprietary technology, it will be very difficult to attract and also retain people. So sometimes modernizing your systems is not only about some very specific business drivers, but it's also making sure that your company becomes a very attractive place for good professionals, right? So that is an interesting perspective that we also need to have. And risk management as well, right? So there is a lot of companies that are in very regulated environments, and it's extremely difficult to be compliant. So compliant with security, with regulations and certifications and stuff like that. And there's a lot of things that you can do modernizing your systems in order to make all of those things much easier to deal with. So those are just common drivers, right? So understanding drivers like that is essential if you want to drive technical change. If you don't understand how to map the things that you want to improve technically to the business, your chances of driving a technical change will be quite small. And some of you maybe in the call that are developers in the early days of your career say, well, but I'm a developer, how much should I care about that? Well, as you evolve, you will want, I believe, to take more senior roles, lead your team, lead a few teams, or making more decisions that impact a broader uh, range of people and business. And at that point, you will need that language, right? So while you just look at your code, you probably don't need to worry about that. But if you want to go beyond the user story that you work on, you will need to start getting some business acumen, right? So another thing, there is the common impediments, but there is the drivers, but there is the impediments as well. So quite often we go there, so we want to do all of that and blah, blah, blah. We want to change these, it to be great for the business. And the business says, yeah, oh, good, but there's no time. There's no money. We don't have the skills. Or this is too risky to do. Or sometimes you say, like, we don't even know where to start. Yeah, it's all good, but you are talking about so many things, like we don't even know where to start. So let's probably not do it. So there are many different reasons for that could be used to block a technical initiative or a modernization. You also need to be prepared for those, right? So for example, lack of time and money is the most common by miles, right? So, and it might be true. So time and money are real constraints. And you need to understand where your organization is, how much they can spend, right? Because then you need to tailor your solution, your proposal within those real constraints. However, there is a different aspect as well. A lot of companies that talk about uh, lack of time and money, or time and money as constraints, they very rarely understand how inefficient they are with their time and money. So they very rarely see how much money and time they spend in a lot of activities that they currently have. So maybe a modernization approach could be focused on reducing that time and money spent on existing processes, which would, done properly, after it's done, would leave the organization with more time and more money to invest on innovations instead of fixing technical debt. But again, you need to have that kind of mentality. Is not just going with a technical solution, but is understanding business-wise, if you are saving time, you're saving money, we are enabling innovation, how you're going to minimize risk. Your strategy needs to cater for that. And then you get to principles. So another important thing is to agree when you are driving a larger change, or maybe a software modernization a project, you need to work under some principles. So if you just say to everyone, look, we're going to do all these things here, we're going to change everything, you're not going to get it, because like it's too scary. Like you cannot go to someone and say, look, my idea here is to throw everything out and start again and change all our systems in one go. You cannot do that, because if I was running that company, I would say, no, we're not going to do that. There's no way in hell. We cannot just stop for 5 years until you guys come up with a brand new system, right? So basically, for me, one of the key things is think big, think strategically, have a big vision, but work in very, very small increments. Apply the Agile principles, the Agile mindset to modernization projects. Have a vision, have a direction, but talk about the increments, talk about the direction and the increments. Every increment should bring value, right? So we cannot just wait for multiple increments to get value. No, we need to organize ourselves in a way that every increment has some value. Another principle in modernization, it needs to create as minimal disruption as possible to business as usual. Because again, when you are doing a modernization project, it's similar to refactoring, but in a much larger scale. When you are doing refactoring, we are making some improvements, but we are not creating a new feature. We are not taking the business to the next level. We are just improving things so things are more stable so that we can continue building on top. Modernization is the same. So there will be a disruption in the business as usual, but we just need to keep that as to the bare minimum, right? Because the business will need to keep moving while we are modernizing certain things. So this needs to be part of the principles for the strategy. Another thing that we in the craftsmanship world, we are very guilty of it. And this is one of my main criticisms to the craftsmanship community, which I helped create myself, right? So we talk a lot about excellence and everything needs to be top excellence, top quality and stuff. Absolutely, it's great to think like that. But if excellence cannot be unbounded. What do I mean by that? If we just focus on excellence, there is a danger that you're going to be refactoring the same class, the same piece of software forever. And we lose sight of the business value. And we just keep improving the aesthetics of a piece of code. But we are not improving the business as a whole. So for me, like excellence need to be bounded by pragmatic solutions. So just think about that a bit, right? Because it took me a while to figure that out. So when I'm creating a solution, I need to take all the constraints I have and say like, what is the most pragmatic solution to this problem that I can come up with? Right? So the solution needs to be as simple as possible, the most pragmatic one, taking a lot of things into account. And within the boundaries of a pragmatic solution, you have excellence. You cannot be the other way around. You cannot just say, we need to have excellence across the board, because that is not worth it. And this leads us to the law of diminishing returns. This is the same as the Pareto's law, the 80-20, right? So sometimes it's not, well, most of the times it's not worth it to fix every single problem you have, because certain problems are far bigger than others. Sometimes putting the effort in 20% of your issues may create an 80%, that's the Pareto's law, of improvement. And that should be good enough. So going beyond that to try to get the last 20% of improvements may take another 80% of your time. So there is a law of diminishing return. Make sure that you focus on what it matters, that has a big impact, but don't waste a lot of time in much smaller things, right? And another problem is like, there's also a problem sometimes in the craftsmanship world. If it's not broke, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? So it doesn't matter if you like or dislike the code or the solution. Do we need to change it? If the answer is no, don't touch it, right? So everything I said up until now is the foundation that you need to have before we even consider to drive technical change. You need to have those things in your mind, because otherwise you will not be able to speak to the business people, right? You're not going to be able to convince anyone. Once you are there, now it's time with that foundation. Okay, how can we drive a modernization topic? For me, there are 5 key stages that we apply in software modernization projects. And those 5 key stages, they can be done sometimes in a few days, right? I'm not talking about months in here. I'm talking about a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. You can have a good start, right? So you need to, first of all, really understand what you want. And you need to bring the relevant people together. So bring all the different people that, remember that you're trying to create a strategic change, right? That's the goal here. You're modernizing a system, that's a strategic move to the company. So you need to bring the people that are interested or are impacted by this decision. People from the business, the technical people, operations, QA, marketing, whoever you would be important in that discussion. And you need to run a series of well-structured workshops, right? So normally what you need to do, align the business, align the technology, create a vision, create a strategy, and then how you're going to implement that. All of that, as I said, can be done if you have this right skill set and the right people in the room in a matter of a few days, right? So I'll go into more details just to give an example of things that you can do in your organization yourselves, right? So aligning the business. Imagine that you were going to bring, because like probably your business people, they will have their own complaints. Your product owners, your director of something, or director of product, whoever those business people are, they might have in their heads what is not working well. which might be significantly different from how a developer thinks that is not working well, or the QA, or the operations, or whoever, right? So when you bring those in, you say, okay, what are the problems that we have? And also let's focus the kind of improvements that we want to do here. Are we talking about cost reduction? Are we talking about compliance with regulation, risk management? So what is the area that we are tackling here? What is the real pain in here, right? Are we tackling inefficiencies? Are we doing some experiments? Where are we really having a problem? Also, for very large organizations, the pictures that I have in there is from a real workshop I've done with a very, very large client. So this is a 5,000 people company with loads of departments, with a gigantic system. Well, they have a huge number of systems in there, and the main one has more than 16 million lines of code and stuff. So one of the things that we've done, we need to decide where we start. So we ran a few exercises to say, look, let's try to understand how the company is organized and focus on the specific areas, because those areas should be mapped into how the system is done as well. So then we broke we had a high level. This is our very, 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 very high level architecture. So there is more the bounded context, the functional areas that we call. So we had 16 areas that were further divided into multiple areas. And once we have that focus, then we say, okay, we know that we have problems everywhere, but what are the key areas where we are having problems? And then we were able to focus in there. So that already narrowed our problem significantly. And in there, we start saying, okay, now that we have some focus, let's be very specific in our alignment here. So what are the main features? First of all, like these alignments, this is a fascinating thing when you do that. You take people that have been working for the same organization for a few years, but they are from different departments. They're from marketing or from sales or from business, developers, architects, QAs, and you ask them, what are the key features in this area, the key behaviors that our systems have? They will come up with a very different list of things. Because they look at the systems in a completely different way. So you run a workshop that captures that, how they see, and then you try to, normalize that, to make sure that everyone sees the same things. So now that we understand what this area does, what are the pain points? This is another fascinating thing to do, because the pain points seen by a developer, by an architect, by a QA, are very, very different from the pain points seen by the sales, the marketing, the business person. They have different pain points. They're the same, but they have different impacts. So you need to analyze that. So to bring them all together, have that conversation, enable them to see that. And then you agree, what are the desired improvements? What would you like to change moving forward? So see, what we are doing here is we are not providing any solutions yet. Here, what we're doing is creating alignment at business-wise, right? So we are trying to understand if everyone, before we talk about solutions and strategy, do we even agree what problems we have? And then there is another thing that is fascinating. Each person looks from a different perspective on the problems, but very rarely there is a single person that has the visibility of the whole. There is one of our favorite exercises called value stream mapping, or path to production. This is a real example of one of the things that we ran. We run that very often to almost our clients. You bring all those different people to the same room and say, I want to map every single step that exists from an idea to software in production. So what happened? Where do the ideas come from? Who thinks about the requirements? Because it's not the product owner yet. There are many different stakeholders before. So how that conversation with stakeholders happen? Who collect that information? Where is it stored? How do we decide who is going to work on it? Which team is going to work on it? Who decide those priorities? And then when it gets to the teams, what do the teams do? How do they work? How do they organize themselves? What is their development life cycle? Do they work with stories, with Kanban? So do they push directly to production? So do they have QA embedded? So how does that work? Or they finish the iteration and then push somewhere else into a branch, and then someone else needs to review that branch and then pass to whatever, the QA or release branch or whatever. So we start mapping all of that. And the funny thing is that different people know details about different steps of that map. And as you are progressing from idea to production, different people get more involved and give more details. And all of a sudden, when you finish that, you look at that board and it's like, whoa, we had absolutely no idea. This is how we work. And this gives everyone alignment. It tells everyone, say, oh, now we understand why we are in this mess. Now we understand why we take so long to do things. So you start identifying where the problems are, where the bottlenecks are, right? So another thing you need to do for the business alignment is, so one is understanding where we are, what are the pain points, what are the desired improvements, all good. But where are we going? Where the business wants to go? Do we have some portfolio? Do we have some milestones and goals, some backlog? So we need to look ahead a bit and say, like, those are the main features. Those are the main business goals that the business wants to achieve. Okay, we all need to understand that. This needs to be clear to everyone, including the technical people. What are the constraints? Do we have deadlines? Are they internal or externals? Internals we can deal with, externals we can't. If it's coming from regulators, there's nothing we can do about it, right? So is an external deadline imposed on us, there's a constraint, there's nothing we can do about it. Whatever we do, we need to satisfy that. So are there SLAs? Are there lack of skills? What are the constraints in the business? Certifications, regulations, all of those kinds. We all need to be clear about that. Technical people, business people, everyone. Right? So what are the OKRs? What are the things that we want to change? Like all things like that, right? So how are we going to measure all of that? Right, we want to do this big thing, this big improvement in here. There is a cost, there is a time, so there is an investment that we are making. So, but what are we trying to improve? So there is this book called Accelerate. If you haven't read this book, Accelerate. This book has a lot of data, so they gathered a lot of data. There's a lot of research in there, and they talk about those 4 key metrics, right? So how often do we release software to production, the lead time from idea to production, when things go wrong, how fast can we fix things that go wrong, and the frequency that things go wrong. So those are 4 key metrics that, in general, they represent the health of a software organization. So have a look at the book, you have far more data, but those key metrics is one of the metrics that we can use to measure. It's not the only ones, because metrics should be given a context. Given what we discussed with the business and technology, you should come up with your own metrics, but those are 4 standard metrics that I think that should be always taken into account. So up until now, we've done business alignment. Now, at this point, and again, we are talking about a few hours here, maybe a day, right? We now have that common understanding of the business. Now we need to do the technical alignment. The technical alignment is done with the business people. It's the same group of people. We cannot have technical alignment without the business. That doesn't work. So what we mean by technical alignment? We need to understand the existing solution. Here, we will not be talking about Java or low-level frameworks and APIs. This is a much higher level, right? So the same way that we talked about business in a very high level, we're going to be talking about our existing solution, our existing technical solution at a higher level. So we need to understand in this area that we've been discussing at the business alignment, what are the key systems involved, right? So what are their responsibilities? How many systems do we have in the area that we discussed in the business alignment? What is their role? What do they do? What are the main features? Who works with them? Which teams are responsible for them? What is their release cadence? What are the main issues that we have in there, right? So also, we take some of the features, the main features that we discuss in the business alignment, and say, look, in order to do those main flows, business flows, how many systems are involved to satisfy those different flows? Is it just one system? If it's one system, how many different areas or bounded contexts within the systems are involved in satisfying the main features? Are there more than one team responsible for each area? Everyone owns anything? There is a how is that relationship, right? So, and then it goes through a similar exercise. By the way, the business people should be able to understand, because you're drawing boxes and arrows, right? So like this, there is this system here, this system there, that's who owns it and stuff. They start getting familiar with the technical problems at a high level. And then we talk about the pain points, desire improvements, technical constraints, and the risks in touching those things. All of that is high level. So the business people will be able to follow for sure. But they will start understanding, oh, this is why it's so hard to test. Oh, this is what it takes to put a system in production. Oh, we didn't know that we need to involve all those different people to monitor our systems in production. Or because of the complexity of our systems, that's why it's so difficult to identify when something goes wrong. What we would like to improve? Well, those areas in here, as we discussed in the value stream mapping, this area in here takes a long time. This testing thing or this review process or these approvals from compliance, if you are in a regulated environment, or this documentation that we need to create, right? So, or we use old technologies because we use this data center or rely on this external company. Those are constraints. And what are the risks if we touch those systems? What can go wrong? So this is what I call technical alignment. Because we technical people understand that, but the business have sometimes no clue about this. So it's very difficult for you to propose a solution to solve some of those problems if the business doesn't even understand what you're talking about. And then we can have many other things. So SLAs, regulations, all of data location. So where do we store the data? We cannot, in certain business, you cannot store the data everywhere. So you need to have some policies that will limit the kind of solutions that you have. One of our clients, they cannot be multi-tenant. That means every client that they have need to have their own instance of their systems in production. So they have more than 11,000 production installations, where 4,000 of them are on premise. So when you have this kind of complexity, it really limits the kind of solutions you can give, the kind of architectures that you can use, the kind of technologies that you can use, because you need to understand the constraints of the business. And the business needs to understand that we cannot just have put a single system in AWS and scale that horizontally and put in some load balancing in front. So we need to architect our system in a very specific way because we have 11,000 installations. When you change a database, there are 11,000 databases that needs to be changed. 5,000, 4,000 in environments that we don't own, that is outside our company. So not always the business have that perspective of how difficult it is to make certain changes. And this is what the technical alignment is for, is so that everyone understands the kind of problems we have. Once this side, the business alignment and technical alignment, is the most difficult thing to do. It can be done quickly if you have the right people and you have the skills to facilitate those meetings. It can be done quickly in a matter of few days. You can get most of the things discussed, but it is difficult to get there because you need people that can talk at different levels. Then once you have the alignment, now the easy part comes in. Now is an area that we are technical people are more comfortable. Now that we all understand what our problems are, business and technology, what we want to fix, what is the priority, now we create a vision. So, okay, so given everything we discussed, if we had a magical wand, I think I said, bling, where we would like to be, what problems we would like to go away, how we would like our systems to look like, right? If you have all the time and money in the world, what we would like to do. So then we create this vision, right? So creating a technical vision is a direction. A technical vision is a place where we would aspire to be, where we would like to be. It will take years. We may never get there, but it serves as a direction. And it's a moving target as well. Here we also will apply a very or the agile mindset, you have a vision, you have a direction, but you are going to build the plan incrementally, right? So as you create this vision, this is where we as technical people, this is our chance to get people excited about and say, look, now we are all on the same page. Let's create this thing that would solve. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had this kind of thing? This is the point that we excite everyone, right? So they're saying, wow, you know what? That would be amazing if we had that. That it would be really, really cool. But is it even possible? Well, let's see what kind of things that we could. This vision needs to address the main issues. You cannot sell a vision that doesn't address any problem. So as we are refining that vision, you are defining how we would like to structure the teams, which kind of technology that we would like to use. How do you think that quality should be part of the entire process? Quality is not just automating tests, right? So quality should be seen in a holistic manner, from idea to production. Quality should be across all of that, right? So removing those bottlenecks of your process, removing anything that goes back into your process, following a more lean approach, more Kanban approach, right? So quality should be, so how do we want that to happen? What are strategic technologies that we would like to invest? What kind of skills we would like to have? That is the vision. And the vision needs to address the main concerns. Then it gets serious. Now we have so we are on the same page. We are excited about the vision, but we are all like, yeah, okay, that sounds very well and good. But is it possible? How do we go from where we are to that crazy vision that we created, right? So this is where a lot of hard work, but fortunately is a bit easier for us on the technical side now. Now we are getting closer to the solutions that we have in our mind. What do we need to do here? Do we need to rewrite some stuff? Do we need to re-platform? Do we need to re-architect, refactor? Most often than not, a modernization project will be a mix of all of those things. Will be a bit of refactor, a bit of re-architecture, a bit of re-platforming. There will be a lot of those things in here. Normally there is a bit of everything. So, but you cannot do all. So for me, this is a very simplistic way of seeing the problems. You can prioritize. So you can prioritize in different ways. You can say, look, there is this functional area of our business that is not doing so well. The payments area, or the pricing area, or the catalog, or whatever functional area that is not stable enough and is critical to our future. We can say, let's focus on that. Let's create a strategy to improve that area. Or are we going to build new features? How that work? There was a very interesting case we had. There is a business flow. For example, they realized that they have 300 employees in their business. This is a different client. So that in order for them to do their job, their day-to-day job, they had to use 3 different systems. And they had to copy and paste data from different systems and duplicate stuff because they acquired different companies and so on. And there was another client where the user journeys in order for them to buy whatever they needed to buy was very painful. So you can take even like business flows like that or user journeys and create a strategy to satisfy that user journey, to improve that. Right? So then you focus. Or for example, code hotspots was a very interesting one. It's a very different prioritization technique. It's like one of our biggest problems is because our teams cannot work independently. We struggle to parallelize work. For example, how do you know that? Because every release, you need to have a code freeze that impacts loads of different teams and test is done across the entire system. This is because everything is together. Right? You have hotspots where everyone is changing the same kind of things. So maybe there is a modernization project to be able to decouple the different streams of work. Decoupling our systems, re-architecting our systems would allow multiple streams to happen in parallel, which would make the entire organization more efficient. But see what we're saying now. We're not just talking about, oh, let's break our monolith to go microservices. We're going to enable different areas of our business, different teams, different business flows or work streams to be done safely and in parallel and have their own release cadence. That's the business problem that we're solving if we modularize our system. See where I'm coming from, right? So, and then there is the actual techniques. Here you have for example, in that example I gave where we have 11,000 production installations, we could not go microservice. Imagine you having loads of microservices and having to replicate each one of them 11,000 times. So our production environment would be extremely complex to handle. So we decided to keep the monolith, but modularize the monolith. So now we have different pieces like jar files and stuff, but we deploy everything together. So when we actually get to the deployment, everything gets deployed together, but we are able to work in smaller parts while developing. So other places, it was the right thing to do. Say, look, you know what, in this case in here where we can be multi-tenant, so let's split this monolith apart. Let's break a few services apart. Shall we break all of them? No. Let's break just a few of them that are important. The other ones live in the middle of the mess, right? There's no point in modularizing things that we're not going to change. So stronger fig. And so here there are many different technical strategies that you can apply to solve different problems. The UI-based flow orchestration. I can go into more details in another opportunity, but all of those things in here that are breaking a database is one of the most difficult things to do. There are multiple strategies to do that. So again, but this is the time that now we would discuss as technical people, say, this is what we could do. So I was talking about modularization before. For me, modularization is key, whichever you are doing, modularization is key. How do we explain modularization to our business? Well, why do we want to do that? It reduces the cognitive load. Every time that you go and work in one area, you just need to know about that area. You know that whatever you do, as long as the contract of that area remains the same with the rest, as long as the API is not changing, you just need to know that area, right? So you don't need to know anything else. So there is a reduction in cognitive load. It's much easier to make those changes. So that allows the change to be done safer in a localized way. It's much easier to test. It's much easier to deploy independently. So it's much easier to parallelize work. So, and it's much easier to do incremental improvements because now you can focus on all those areas independently. So see, you don't go to your business and say, I want to refactor my code and I want to split into different services. That is not the right conversation to have, right? So you need to understand what are those different modules would provide to the business? What problems are you going to solve modularizing our system? And those are some of them, right? So, and then we also need to understand what is modularization, at which level are we planning to modularize? Because there are multiple levels. A modularization can be, as I said, we have a modular monolith in one of our biggest clients. So in there, we modularize a package and namespaces first, and then we move to components that we have jar files now in there. We are using Java. So, but the next level could be services. That is another type of, or group of services. We have areas of the business that, for example, the payment systems in one of our clients has 5 services. And the payment systems is one module that is further divided. So it's a group of services for the catalog has a few services. So there are multiple levels of modularization, all the way from architecture to a class and function level. And then finally, once we have a strategy, how do we go about it? And here we have quite a few options because the business say, okay, so now I understand what you want to do. What are the next steps? What you're going to be changing? How do we organize ourselves? How many people do we need? Right? How do we do that? Again, you have many different options, right? So all of them have pros and cons, as everything I said up until now. One way of doing modernization projects: bring a team from your organization or external that is highly specialized in the problem that you want to solve. If you want to move something to the cloud, or if you want to break an architecture, or if you want to break a database, or whatever you want to do, form a small team and give them, say, like, you are dedicated to do this. The advantage of a dedicated team, a dedicated cross-functional team, is that they can very quickly speed up that modernization effort, because that's their only focus, right? You can also have a specialized teams. You can have a group of people for different things. You can have like a few people that really understand AWS or cloud or whatever, or another one that understands automation pipeline, another one that automate tests. So you have a very small group of people that are not cross-functional, but they are just in there to solve very specific problems. This is good because you can accelerate the modernization process, and the sooner the organization will get the return on investment, but there's not a lot of knowledge share. So now you can also choose, like your existing teams, you can unify backlog. Never, please, never, ever have one team with more than one backlog. There's no such a thing as a business backlog and technical backlog, right? So you cannot have that, because this is a recipe for disaster, because there will be one people looking at one backlog, there's another set of stakeholders looking at a different backlog, and then there is the team in the middle trying to explain to both sides why they're not making enough progress in each one of those backlogs, because they're dividing their attention. Sometimes they do a bit of this, sometimes they do a bit. So unify the whole backlog, and then having business and technology together, say the team will say, look, we are one team, we can do whatever you want, but you need to prioritize. There are business tasks, technical tasks, they all have value. What is their priority? And then the team can help with that prioritization. So this is good because you make technical improvements and business as usual, but it slows down the change, the technical improvements. And then you have many other different things. You can embed people in your teams. You can have just, for example, at UBS, when I worked for investment bank, we had 20% of time for improvements. It's good. Like it is an approach, but normally when you have just 20% of time for improvements, you never have proper time to do something strategic. Everything that you do in those 20% always tend to be small improvements. We made the tests a little bit faster. We improved maybe an automation of certain things, but it will never be a fundamental architectural change or something that will fundamentally change your organization, right? So there are many different approaches, but this needs to be discussed between technology and business. How much effort we want to spend on that, and in which way, right? So whichever technical work you do that properly. Do that as a proper agile project. Incremental approach. Every technical task you have needs to have a business value. If you are not able to express the business value of the technical task, you should not do it. You should think again, right? Because whatever we do needs to have a business value. It needs to be demoed as well. Even if you go to the command line and run some crazy commands in there, you need to find a way to demo those things. And this is a thing that we took a while to learn. We have a lot of modernization projects going on now, but demonstrating progress in technical work is not simple. Now we are very comfortable with it, but it's complex because we need to give a lot of context to people and explain the reason behind those crazy stuff that we are doing, right? So this is the summary. So if you want to drive technical change, you want to go for a modernization project, you want to drive to have that conversation and increase your chances, you need to expand your mind. You need to be talking about business. You need to have that alignment first and then create a strategy. You cannot just go there with a solution. And there is not every single person, not every person has this kind of mindset. So my recommendation for all developers in the call is start learning about business, right? So learn how a business works, how your company makes money. What are the risks for your company? Behind every feature that you are working, try to understand why do we need to build that? What are we adding to the business when we're working on that? And if you make a change, it cannot just be because I want to use a different technology, right? So I will skip this for now because this is how you can do at large scale. And for me, this is a different talk that I have, but I just would like to there is a talk that I have that's called Aligning Product and Software Design, which I go in far more details in the actual mechanics of doing some of those things. But my view as this is an agile community, at least in Singapore, we are talking to agile community. The Vietnamese is the craftsmanship community. But for me, like in terms of agile as it is seen today, not as the one created like 19 years ago, but we are very good in agile projects to do iterations, backlogs, demos, refinements, and stuff like that. But this is done in isolation from technology, right? So if you look at the yellow orangish line, creating milestones and iterating and stuff, we do that very well, either with Kanban or with Scrum or a mix or whatever. But what we don't do is a strategic, we don't create a technical strategy and review that often in order to keep supporting the business, right? So in this other talk, I try to talk about when the business is creating a product definition, what can we as technology do to support that? What will be the technical feasibility of those things that they want to do? Every time they define a milestone or create a roadmap, what are the kind of information that we can provide to them to support that roadmap, to make sure that it's viable to do all of that? So it's combining the strategic side of product design with software design, aligning all the way down to the user stories. So that was what I had to share with you. So I believe that I just went over time, but I have more time myself. So feel free if you want to have some questions. I'm more than happy to share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Sandro, for sharing. I can fully resonate with what you said over there about there's this lack of the skill from technical people to relate, to listen to what business needs are, and then to use that as a way, as a direction to drive technical improvements. Yeah, that is so lacking, and it's very difficult to get people to be motivated, interested in that as well. So we are here open for questions. If you have questions that you'd like to ask Sandro, please type into the Zoom chat.
Question. You've spoken a lot about dealing with the business people. How do you convince the technical people, which are normally quite easy to convince?
So convince them about what? Because there are different things to convince technical people. So what kind of convincing they want?
Well, about the whole modernization thing, whether you should stick to the old technology, move the new technology, use a new tool, stick to the old tool, do testing, not do testing, of course do testing, but that sort of stuff.
I see. So this is sometimes a bit harder because like we are all quite emotional when we are really attached to the things that we do. And quite often I believe that many developers, and I include myself on that, when someone comes to you and say, hey, you need to work in a different way, you feel attacked. You feel that people are saying that you don't work well, right? So, and we discussed that a lot for years in the software craftsmanship community in London. So the most common question in 10 years was, how do I convince my team to do TDD or my manager to do TDD? That's the most. So the answer for me in here is similar to what I spoke before. Don't go to a developer with a solution, because if you go to a developer and say, you need to do TDD, like, let's say someone comes to me and say, you should stop doing TDD or you should use this different thing. The first question I would ask is like, why? Why would I do that? Right? So, and then the person said, well, because it's much better. According to whom? According to you? So see what I'm saying? So the problem with when you say to a developer, you need to do TDD, you need to do this, you need to do that, is we are pushing a solution into them and we are failing to agree on a problem, right? So what we can say is, look, first of all, we need to agree that the software project is not about an individual, right? So it's not about my preference or your preference. It's about like what is best for the group. And although you can have, because you cannot also say to the same developer, say, look, yeah, but it's very difficult to maintain the code, because the developer might not find that. is difficult. But you need to say, well, but that's what everyone, well, most people here find it difficult. So you need to start tackling the problems. Like, look, remember that we had a bug and we had to debug that and figure it out. So it normally takes a long time because we don't know when things go wrong, we don't know exactly where. It takes a while for us to get that information. Or we have a very long QA cycle. We cannot just push straight to production. The reason being is because, like, every time that we change the code, you might be 100% sure that your bit is not broken. But how about everything else? As soon as we made the change, how do we know that we didn't break anything else? Right? So those are the different types of discussion, because now see that we move the discussion away from you developer, you are doing wrong, you should do TDD. You're not accusing that person anymore. You are now trying to establish a common foundation, a common understanding of problems that we have, right? And that's really more important. So if we establish that, it's like, do we agree that it's difficult to maintain our system? Do we agree that very often we need to debug stuff? If we have that agreement, then we get to how can we solve that? Hopefully to lead more naturally to maybe should write some tests. And then a natural discussion will be, should we write it after or before the production code, right? So, but you progress in that discussion gradually, right?
All right, we have one question from Ravi. His question is, how can we help tech staff feel that they are part of the business, valuable to its success and even an equal partner, rather than simply an order taker from the business, like we will do whatever you say with no questions asked?
Right, for me, I see two different problems in here. One is a personal attitude. Someone that has a personal attitude in terms of, look, I'll do what you ask and I'll go home. And as long as you, my employer, is happy, my job is done. That is a personal attitude. This is much harder to change, right? Because the person is happy to be like that. I go to work, I do what I was asked, and I go home because my focus is in other things. So in that case, the solution is different. You will need to, if you really want to spend energy doing that, which I did a lot, is try to inspire this person. Is trying to say, look, we can do much more. I know that you have kids, you have loads of other things, but like while you are spending time at work, we can make it very enjoyable. We can do far more and achieve more. But that's a more personal thing. But let's say that a different part of the conversation was when someone is there, really wants to be part of the business conversation, really wants to talk to the business, but they don't know exactly how. So this is a very different situation. So what I always say, even to people inside my company, I say, everyone wants to be part of certain groups. It's like, do you want to make decisions? Do you want to be part of the decision-making group? Would you like to contribute to those decisions? A lot of people say yes. Yes, I would like to sit down with the business and show my ideas. And I would like to be in that architecture group or in that. First, you need to want to be there. But then, for me, the most important question, which took me a long time also to understand, is what do I bring to the table? Right? So we all want to be part of some groups. But what does the group get from me? What do I contribute to that group? Because I cannot just say, I want to tell the business people what they should do or contribute with my ideas if you don't have ideas, if you don't have the level to contribute. And you cannot just join a group just to be there listening, because the group doesn't get anything from you. So for me, the advice is make sure that you have something to contribute. If you want to be part of certain groups and certain meetings and certain decisions, make sure that you have something that we always have things to say, but make sure that you have something that is relevant for the other people in that group, that they would benefit from what you're saying. And if you are failing, if you are speaking to them and you feel that they are not listening to you or they don't understand you, don't blame them. right? So it's your fault that you are not able to communicate, because it's very easy for us to our egos and say those people are stupid, they don't understand what I'm saying, they don't view what is obvious to me, and I'm the only smart person in the world and no one else sees that. No, you probably are not communicating well. If it was very obvious, if it was so clear, everyone would understand that those people are not stupid, right? So that's another advice that I would say. Make sure that you understand how you're communicating, and if you are communicating the same level of abstraction that the other ones are also communicating.
Sandro, hi, Farah here. Sandro, I do agree, yes. Because sometimes, as you said, yeah, they should know actually if they do something, some change or a new enhancement, they should know the objective behind what's a business purpose, what's an objective related or the business value related to that particular change. But being, I was not in development first of all. I used to be in lead BA role and then Scrum Master. So I even have encountered sometimes, of course, they do want to learn. It's like some have a fixed mindset. They say, no, we don't want to learn more. It's not our job. Just let me do my work. And can you give me the BRDs or FSDs? We'll see what is required and we'll do that. Sometimes I had this, but sometimes, of course, as you say rightly, they want to learn, but time isn't, time is an lack of time is there, because they say if we waste so much time in understanding the functional aspect, we may not be finished on the time, and being on sprints, everything is time box tight. So that's I felt in both the ways. Sometimes it's like they want to learn but they do not have time, and due to things are otherwise sometimes they don't even want to learn because they say their work job can be done by reading the FSDs or the walkthroughs being given by the BAs or uh, product managers. So this is just my thing, yeah.
Mhm. So the time is probably the most common. I'll say excuse in a good way. I'm not trying to say that in a bad way at all. But it's the most common. I don't have a better word. Excuse for us not to do certain things, right? So, and that might be true. So, and there are different types of learning as well. For example, in what you were saying, there are learnings that are related to the business, there are learnings that are related to your career, right? So they are for me separate things. So let's talk about the career first, and I'll address the business later. So for me, like I wrote a full book on it, right? So a big chunk of my book is dedicated to owning our own career. Um, I would never allow an employer to dictate what I learn and what I don't learn, because my career is my responsibility. So during the working hours, I'm paid to do a job. If I want you to learn things that are not part of the job, my employer should not pay for it, right? Or if I want my employer to pay for it, they should get some benefits from it, right? So I'm putting a very black and white way. In the real world, is a far more. Of course, we want, as an employer, would be smart from you as an employer to give time for your employees to learn, because they will be better at what they do. But I'm putting a very simplistic way. So the way I treat personally is, if I want to evolve my career, I will find the time to do that outside working hours. Of course, that when you do that, you sacrifice other things. I also have kids and stuff, and you don't do that. For example, I'm not in favor. It never worked for me. Say like I'm gonna set aside 2 hours every day to do some learning for my career. It never worked like that, because there are weeks that my kids need me, or they are sick, or I'm tired. But there are other weeks that I would say, like this week, I'm going to put a few more efforts because the kids are on holidays or whatever, right? So, when I have more time, so we can calibrate how much time we dedicate. That's the personal side. Uh, on the business side, the business also needs to learn. We also need to explore, but then it's a business decision. So if I feel that it's so important for us to investigate a new technology, that is so important for us to try a different way of working, that would improve the business, I should be able to make that case. Why am I failing to convince the business that would be important for us to investigate certain things or do some experiments? So I should be able to make that case, right? So, and sometimes we just say, I just want time to do some experiments, but we fail to provide why we would, what we would benefit from.
Thanks so much, Sandro. I really agree on this. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah.
I guess that's about it. Thank you so much, Sandro, for sharing your insights and experiences with us. It is an exciting and full of energy talk to me. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great to speak to all of you.